Okay, so in today's lesson, we're going to be learning about how to earn an income because everyone likes to have a little bit extra cash in their pocket. Alright, so what we're going to be looking at first is some different ways to earn an income. This isn't every way to earn an income, these are just some very common ones that most people will see. Alright, so we could have an hourly wage. So an hourly wage is the amount that you get paid for an hour's worth of work. So, for example, the minimum wage in British Columbia is $13.85 an hour. So most students, when they get their first job, they're going to be making a minimum wage, and this is probably a good starting point for most people. And at least for me, this is a lot better than when I was younger. When I was younger, my minimum wage was $8.50 an hour, so inflation has definitely increased it a bit. Alright, salary. So a salary is the amount of money you are paid over a fixed period of time. So for example, I'm a teacher and I'm given a yearly salary for the amount of work I do. Now, my salary is based on the fact that if I work full-time and don't miss any work, that's how much I will make in a year. Alright, so what about commission? So commission is another example of how you can get paid. So with commission, you get paid a certain percentage of the total sales that you make. So there's a few different ways we could have this. So one, you could have straight commission. So with straight commission, you're just making a percentage of the sales that you make. You could have graduated commission. This is slightly different. So with graduated commission, they have a certain benchmark set. So you get commission up to a certain point, and once you pass that benchmark, then your percentage for your commission increases. So it's an incentive for you to sell more, because the more you sell, the more you make. You could have salary plus commission. So you could be given a base salary and then get commission on your sales on top of this. So for example, a car salesman earns a commission on each car that they're able to sell. Okay. What about piecework? So with piecework, this is any type of employment where the worker is paid a fixed piece rate for each unit that they're able to produce. Now, this is regardless of the time it takes spent on producing the item. Okay, so for example, if you look at contractors, anything in agriculture, or artists, or the list goes on and on and on, these types of workers get paid for the product they produce. So, for example, a contractor, if a contractor is asked to build a house, he is only going to charge a certain amount for that house, unless you get extras. It's kind of a certain rate. So the faster he can build the house, the faster he can get paid that amount, so he can move on to the next house and get more money. But if he drags it out, he's still going to get paid the same amount, but it's going to take him a lot longer to do. So with piecework, the faster you can do it, the better. Alright, so some things to know about earning an income. So when you get your paycheck, one of the first things you're going to want to see is what is your gross income. So your gross income is the total income that you get before deductions. Now, the more important one that you're going to want to know is your net income. Your net income is your total income after deductions. So this is the money you actually put in your pocket, take home, or you put in your bank. Deductions, the least favorite part. These are the amounts that are subtracted from your paycheck. So these could be things like EI, so employment insurance, CPP, Canadian Pension Plan if you're in Canada, income tax, union dues, things like dental, health, medical, all those kind of things, they get deducted off of your paycheck. But depending on what they're for, they could benefit you later down the road, so it is worth paying them. Now when you work, a full work day is considered 8 hours a day, and a full work week is considered 5 days a week. Now, these are with most jobs. They work 8 hours a day and 5 days a week. It's not consistent for every job, but not all jobs are the same. Now, with your job, if you work anything beyond those regular work days or hours, this brings us into what is overtime pay. So, with overtime, it is the time spent working at a job that is on top of the normal hours that you would normally work. So, anything, for example, beyond 8 hours a day or 5 days a week for your typical normal job. Now, with most overtime pay, as a worker, you'll most likely see something called time and a half. So this is when they take your regular wage, so for example, your hourly wage, and times it by 1.5. Now, in some cases, you may see double time, very similar. You take your regular wage and times it by 2. And then possibly in some rare circumstances, you might get triple time. So in certain jobs, maybe, for example, working a stat holiday, you may see your wage and they times it by 3. Now this one is very unlikely, but you never know. I've never seen it, but I've heard of it. But the most common one for jobs is time and a half. And this is what most workers will see if they are paid overtime hours, at least just for regular overtime. Now, looking at our first example. So, in this example, we have a construction worker, and he makes $25 per hour. If this person works 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, how much will they earn on their paycheck after 2 weeks? So, for those of you who have jobs, most of you would know that with most jobs, your paycheck comes out after every 2 weeks. Now, this isn't always the case, but for most jobs, that's how it is. Now, since we're dealing with a word problem, let's highlight the important pieces. So, this worker makes $25 per hour, works 8 hours a day, and 5 days a week, and then we want to know how much they make after 2 weeks. All right. So first, how much do they make a day? If we take their wage, $25 per hour, and times it by 8 hours a day, that'll tell us how much they make in a day. So in this case, our construction worker makes $200 a day. So that's definitely not a bad wage. I can relate with that, as I used to be a construction worker, but I was getting paid a lot lower than a normal construction worker because I was just doing it as a summer job, not as a full-time job. Now, if I take this and times it by 5 days a week, this will tell us how much our worker makes in a week. So 200 times 5 gives us $1,000 per week. So that's a pretty good wage. I wouldn't mind that. Now, if we take this, since we're getting paid after every 2 weeks, we need to times it by 2. So our construction worker is going to have a gross income after 2 weeks, and that's going to be $2,000. Now, this is their gross income, so this isn't necessarily what they're going to take home. So if they have any deductions, then you'll have to look at their net income. All right, so same example, but we're going to expand it a bit. So we still have the same construction worker, still makes the same wage, which is $25 an hour, but this time he gets paid time and a half for any overtime, so working more than 8 hours a day. Now, how much would this person earn if they worked for an 11-hour shift? So, highlight your important pieces. So, $25 an hour. For overtime, they get time and a half. Works, so that's for anything 8 hours more in a day. And then this person works for an 11-hour shift. Now, we want to figure out first, what is their overtime wage? So as we saw before, since we're dealing with time and a half, I'm going to take my wage, so $25 an hour, and times it by 1.5. So this worker for overtime is going to make $37.50 an hour. Now, that's a substantial increase. So you can see why people like to work overtime in some examples. Now, since he works an 11-hour shift, 8 hours are regular hours, and the additional 3 hours to get 11 are considered the overtime hours. So to figure out how much he gets paid, we need to treat it as two separate pieces, one for the regular hours with the regular wage, one for the overtime hours and overtime wage, and then add them together to figure out how much this person makes. So the amount made, like I said, we're going to first look at the regular hours. So the wage is $25 an hour and timesing it by 8 hours. Then we're going to add the overtime wage and times it by the overtime hours. And this will give us $312.50. So comparing it to the first part of the example where they made $200 for an 8-hour shift, this person's going to make an additional $112.50 an hour for only working 3 hours extra in a day. So that's pretty substantial. So I wouldn't mind working an extra 3 hours to make this much. All right, example number 2. So in example number 2, we have a computer salesman, and he works at Best Buy, and he makes 5% commission off of all of his sales. What we want to know is how much will this salesman make if he's able to sell 2 computers, the first one costing $799 and the second one costing $650. So since we're dealing with commission, we have a percentage that we're looking at. But like before, highlight your important pieces. So the commission is 5%, and our first computer sells for $799 and the second one sells for $650. Now, since we're dealing with commission and we're dealing with percents, it's always a good idea to change your percentages into a decimal. So percentages are always out of 100. So to change this, we can take 5% divided by 100%, which gives us 0.05. Or what we can do is shift our decimal 2 places, and it'll also give us the same answer. Now, for the commission and how much they actually make, what we're going to do is take this decimal and we're going to times it by the total of the sales that this salesman was able to make. So in this case, we're going to take 0.05 and times it by 799 plus 650. Or we can simplify this as 0.05 and times it by 1,449. So after selling these 2 computers, this salesman is going to earn a commission of $72.45. So not bad. Now, this is why whenever you go to electronic stores, clothing stores, the salesman, as soon as he sees you, comes over, rushes to you and says, "Excuse me, may I help you?" It's not that they're trying to be rude and persistent, it's just that if they're able to get a sale off of you, they can earn a commission off of that. So in some cases, say you're getting shoes and they say, "Hey, let the person at the till know that I helped you," and they'll usually give you your name, give them your name, and then they'll be like, "Okay, just tell them that." And once you do, they'll keep track of that, so that will be part of the commission that they make. So it's not that they're being rude, they're just trying to earn a little bit more cash for themselves. All right, example number 3. Now, this is a tribute to my mom, as the other week she was making fabric masks for people as a result of COVID-19 and it creating shortages in supply. As she's a quilter, what she's been doing is she's been selling masks, one mask for $10, and it takes her an hour and a half to make one. If she makes 25 of them in total, let's answer the following questions. So we want to know how much will she earn if she's able to sell them all, and we also want to know how long will it take her to make them. All right, so important pieces of information. One mask costs $10, takes half an hour to make, and she makes 25 in total. So to figure out how much Colleen earns, we're going to take $10, since that's how much one costs, and times it by 25. So if she's able to make them all and sell them all, she'll make a total of $250. Now, the important part, how long is this actually going to take her? Is it worth it? So if we take half an hour and times it by 25, it's going to take her 12 and a half hours to complete. Now, she might not do this in a whole day, she might spread it out, but let's say we want to figure out how many minutes this takes. What we need to do is times this by 60 minutes in an hour. So this would take 750 minutes to complete. Now, this is assuming that she makes one individual mask at a time and does one at a time, then the next, to the next, to the next. Now, knowing my mom and other people who do this type of thing, what they probably do is build pieces in bulk and assemble them like an assembly line, so you do different stages at a time, so you can potentially do the same amount of work in a quicker period of time. So if I was to ask my mom, she probably did this in a lot shorter than 12 and a half hours. All right, example number 4. So I'm a teacher. Now, if I look back to if I was a first-year teacher, looking at the BC salary grid, I would have a yearly salary of $50,302. So given this, what would my monthly salary be? So what I need to do is take my yearly salary, and I'm going to times this by 1 year divided by 12, because it's in 1 year there's 12 months, so it's the same as dividing it by 12. So in a month, I'm making $4,191.83. Now, this is actually a little bit different than how I get paid, because as a teacher, I could do this if I wanted to get paid over 12 months, but I have requested to get paid over 10 months, and then over the summer months, I don't get paid. So I actually get paid a little bit more a month, but my salary is still the same. Now, that's just my personal preference. For other people, it could be different, but everyone likes to earn a little bit extra cash, and hopefully these examples can help you out with that. All right, thanks.